just everywhere.
My guest that's in the house because it's the first Friday is Lisa Forte. She's here because they're going to do their Breathe tonight. Their Redeem Her Now up at
We Are Church.
We Are Church. I almost had it.
Yep.
We Are Church. And so we're going to talk about that. But it's so funny because as we were talking about, we have to do an official ID at the top of the hour, 1100 WSGI. We were talking about what what live programming is versus what you hear throughout the day. And we are a licensed. I have people that'll tell me, "Oh, I saw your podcast," and I'm like, "It's not a podcast. It is a video version of a live radio show that's on live terrestrial radio, and that meaning that they have terrestrial as in." The towers are attached to the ground, and so they're terrestrial, and so it's a terrestrial signal, but it's public airways. And I talk about this in my classes with audio video production, but I've always been fascinated by the history of broadcasting. And when radio first started being a thing, people were just throwing up radio stations, left and right, and you were interrupting each other's signal. And so they formed the FCC, Federal Communications Commission, that came in and said, okay, you can go there and your signal can go to here, and this is your dial position, and that's the regulation that goes around it. And if you're on this side of the Mississippi, they start with a W. If you're on the west side, they start with a K, which it really should be flipped. It would make more sense if you were west, it would start with a W, but I don't know. There's a few early radio stations that are on this side of the Mississippi that start with a K, I think, because that was before they changed that. But typically, this side's W's, and over, like if you're out in California and out there, start with a K. So anyway, they regulated all that, and so the FCC says if you're going to have a terrestrial signal that people can just grab from the air, you have to prove that you deserve it, that you serve the public interest. So the very reason we exist as one street over is to serve the public interest, because when we're a Christian broadcast company, so we're putting the gospel message out there as much as we can, but we still, because we have a terrestrial signal, we have to say, yes, we are doing something for our community that's keeping them informed. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so we were talking about that, so I thought I would just share,
That's fascinating.
People, it's so different now because everything is driven by the internet. Even the terrestrial signal stations, we all have an internet presence like we do. I can share what I'm doing on social media anywhere around the world. Same thing with, WTVF, WKRN, WSMV, the TV stations. And of course, WLAC was always my home. All the different call areas. I tell the kids, I said, think about what you can dial in the car or what you can get with an antenna. Those are regulated by the FCC. But everything else, it's like bar the door any, there's no rules really. And, unless the people who run Facebook can say they can do that. There's a lot of controversy around that because they'll do it to one and not the other. And it's a hot mess. But
so then our cable access
that's not regulated
at all, and then
unless you're watching through cable, you can watch Channel 5.
Right.
That what you get through your cable on Channel 5, they're rebroadcasting what is being sent out via antenna, and satellites, not all terrestrial, but ground antennas. And so that is regulated. So if you're getting purely what they are broadcasting through their antenna and their satellites and all of that, then it is regulated. But
that makes sense now that everybody's charging more for local channel.
Yep. And so that is regulated by the FCC. But what you have to use that you have to have the internet for, like just look at some of the movies and stuff that are out there. There's no regular. We were actually, Craig Pulley and the staff there at TBN, TBN, the beautiful studio that they have up in Gallatin, where they were doing the Huckabee show. Now, Huckabee is waiting his confirmation to be the Israeli ambassador, so they've ended the Huckabee show for the time being. And they'll have something other wonderful coming in there. But it's Trinity Broadcast Network.
Yes, yes.
And they're just wonderful. And he and I were talking about, we were sharing, they gave us a wonderful tour yesterday. What a wonderful facility. But we were talking to the kiddos about how it's just changed so dramatically. And he was talking about his experiences at one of the TV stations. I forget which one he was at. I wanted to say it was. I don't want to say, but he was at one of the TV stations for years, and he was talking about the one who owned the station, how they were just absolutely committed to quality programming that was not offensive. You wouldn't see the bad language. You just wouldn't see all the things we see on regular television. I mean, what is broadcast over the public airways now blows my mind. Blows my mind because it was so different.
It was not like that when we were
No,
growing up
I mean
at all.
it's like things like Three's Company was considered so risque.
Right.
I
Like
wasn't.
you had to get cable to get,
Well,
you know what I'm saying? Like, I
more
can
than
remember that.
but even
Yeah.
Three's Company was a broadcast. It was broadcast, but I wasn't allowed to watch it.
Mm-mm.
No, I wasn't allowed to watch that stuff, and so because it was just too much sexual overtones and innuendo, and I was like, turn that thing off.
Yeah.
But anyway, but yeah, we were talking about that, and that's why we do what we do here with One Street Over, and I love it. I love getting to do it. I love keeping my toe in real radio.
So one
And,
more question that popped into my mind about that. So how does the syndicated shows fit in that piece?
They are. It depends on who's doing it. Like
Okay.
right now, you have Hulu and you have Paramount. You have all these different ones that do their own syndicated shows that are part of their subscription package. You can subscribe and watch and all that. I know Amazon Prime is putting out one on King David that's just started that I'm super excited about, and so those things everybody does syndication. The network, CBS, NBC, ABC, they have their syndicated shows that they do that they produce, like Blue Bloods. Okay, that's one I really liked. So Blue Bloods, it's a syndicated show and it's on the public airways, but you can also now have it on a subscription base. I like being entertained every now and then. I like to have something I can watch, and I'm so frustrated because so much of it's trash.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have revisited King of Queens, which was started, it was, it's like 20, 30 years old, but it was on public television. So even it gets a little risque at times, but it's not as bad. But now to watch it, you have to watch it through a subscription base. So it's a whole new thing. When it was originally put out, it was on the public airways.
Right.
And so it's a little more clean and just, not near as edgy.
Yeah.
But syndication can be across the board, but
Okay.
you may see a different version of something right now that they'll syndicate and put out over regular television, like the Channel 5s, Channel 2s, 17, any of those. Channel 2, Channel 5, and Channel 4. I was like, which ones are there in Channel 6? I don't want to leave even out any amount, but the things you'll see on those now will still be cleaner than what you might see later on that will be a edgier version. There was a Dinosaurs was a little animated thing that they did. It was a silly they were dinosaurs and they were puppet. It was like a puppet looking. It was just a silly show that was on when my kids were little. And I remember us watching it and it's like, who's the daddy? And it was just some stupid television.
Right.
I didn't remember it being really risque. Well, I got it off of Amazon Prime and I'm like, oh, it's horrifying. The language and things like that. And I don't think that's what was broadcast when they put it on regular television. I think that's more, I think they must have edited it. I hope I didn't let my children watch that because I was talking to my daughter-in-law about it. And I was like, oh, I wanted to let Rowan watch Dinosaurs. She goes, no. And I said, really? And she goes, watch it. And I was like, oh, I was stunned. I couldn't believe it. And
Isn't that crazy?
she goes, I don't remember, Mom. I don't remember it being like that.
Mm-mm.
And I said, I don't really think it was. I said, I think it was edited to some degree. I think it had to have been. But yeah.
That adds a whole, whole, another layer to us being diligent, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Because it's like, ooh, somebody snuck something in. So, yes, I mean, if we're thinking, I grew up on Gilligan's Island and all
Yeah.
of that.
Oh, yeah, me too.
So, but if what looks like our version has been re-edited to us, like,
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, see, now,
'Cause you don't think, I'm like, you don't have to go back and watch 100 episodes because your kids, you're like, it was good.
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
you let your kids watch it, and then you don't know.
I think you're still safe on the Gilligan's Islands
Right,
and,
right.
and
was just
Andy
using
Griffith's
them as
show
an
and all those.
example.
But yeah, even the Happy Days and Laverne and Shirley,
Right.
God help me, how many people have gone, hey, Laverne, where's Shirley? And you say, I have heard that.
Are you serious?
Oh, yes. My entire, ever since
I've
it
never
came
thought
out.
about that when I've
Oh,
said your name.
yes.
And I love Laverne and Shirley.
Yes.
Now now every time I think about you, I'm going to think Shirley.
But I've heard that. I heard that
right.
forever.
wow.
Still, I still some, but so many people don't remember the show. But I still get it sometimes. But more U-turn now because it's all
Right.
the U-turn stuff. But it's really quite funny. But there's some things that are safe. But there's just like right now. What is that one show that everybody likes to watch? That's on Paramount, and it's about the national park. Yellowstone. I was like, what? It's a national park. I know Paul's probably going, Yellowstone, Laverne, because he's one of my friends on here. I figured he's probably yelling at me, give me the answer. But Yellowstone, it's being rebroadcast on some of the stations that have a terrestrial signal, and I guarantee you it's been cleaned up.
Oh, good.
It would have had to have been. Now, I don't know to what degree. I've never watched it, but I've heard it's really bad language and a lot of content. Now, I have taken to... if I can filter something through VidAngel, I'll go ahead and watch it. There's some things I love. I hate to admit this. I really love the Outlander series, but if you read those books, I think she started out as a romance novel that was just kind of on a trashy side, and I've never read those books. And I discovered the show before I discovered that, and was very offended by it at first, but then I discovered VidAngel and I could filter it. But it's rough. I mean, it is a rough show. And so I won't watch it except through VidAngel so I can go in and filter it because VidAngel, and I pay as much for VidAngel as I do some of my really high-end subscription services.
Oh, really?
It's about $15 a month, but you can go through there and you can select a show and then you can say, I don't want to have any profanity. I don't want to have any, of course, anything with, taking God's name in vain. I don't want to have any kind of sexual you can filter it out. There was something my husband and I were watching the other day, and I ended up enacting something like 200 filters on it to watch it. And I still got the premise of it. We didn't miss anything.
Right.
That was one thing. It filtered it out. And he was like, well, what happened there? And I said, well, the filter said this, this, and this. I said, I bet that's where that happened. And, and I said, I'm glad we didn't have to watch it. There you go. And so, it's just, it's hard, navigating the waters of entertainment now because very little out there is non-offensive and in some way. So, yeah, but that's your lesson. That's your broadcast lesson on why things are what they are now versus what they were and all of that. But the FCC still keeps their thumb on things that are broadcast through the public airways. So there you go. Interesting. Okay. This is Faith Friday, though, not, audio video one.
Well, but it's good to know. It is really good to know because you don't see, well, I shouldn't say see, we don't hear that as much as what we used to. And so just
well, and I don't think people even realize it then why it's, you know what I mean? And I didn't mean to interrupt you, but
no, you're good.
But nonetheless, this is, unless you've been in the industry, you don't really understand it, Right.
So. Well, and I grew up thinking, we hear DJs, right? Mm-hmm. So whenever I come in here, I'm like, oh, she doesn't even have a record player. Like, I know I've never been in a radio station, so I have this vision of what it used to look like, right? Whenever we had records, for those of you who remember that, right?
We had turntables.
Right? Yes, you did. Mm-hmm. So the idea of someone physically being here, so that was like kind of what prompted the question for all the listeners this morning. It's like, does somebody sit in here and do this all day and get to just talk to to themselves, talk to other people? Yeah. So that's neat that that's part of being able to stay on air. So thank you for what you do so that's available. That's cool. I love doing it. I'm just so thrilled they let me do it. But, and here's something. I'm going to just throw this out and then we're going to get on to what you brought. And I've got some questions for you too. I want to subscribe to that card. And I think you've sent me the link before, but can you send it to me again? I want those cards. Mm-hmm. I love that. That's in her, it's in her shop. Okay, I need to find out how to do that. And this is cool when you sign up for her, when you can sign up for her email. And so at the beginning of a new month, she'll send a video of the chalkboard teaching. So it's like a 30-minute deep dive into this. So it's really cool. Can I go archive and look at the old ones too, I wonder? Probably, yeah.
Because I just really need to dig into her stuff, and I keep
Yes.
forgetting to
No, no,
get
no.
that
I'll
link
send
from you.
No, I'll send it to you.
But
I'll email it to you.
well, and I was going to tell you. Oh, this is just kind of one more radio factoid. Okay, I was trying to hook my kids up. We went and did a tour of the Skyway Studio, which is a cool studio up there by Skyline Hospital. It used to be the old Sam's, and it's always amazing studio. So we were going there, and this is back during Christmas. And I thought, well, it'd be really cool if we could stop by Opryland Hotel because it was decorated, and let them go to the food court for lunch, and then go to WSM in the afternoon. And I finally got a hold of a friend of mine that works out there, Charlie Maddows. We used to work together. So proud of all he's doing. He's like one of the voices at the Grand Ole Opry. Such a cool career he's got. But anyway, I finally got in touch with him, and he's like, LaVern, we're not there in the afternoon. There's nobody there. He goes, they do the morning show live, and then it's all automated. And so it sounds live, but people they track it. They come in and they do all their breaks, and they plug it into the computer, and it just rolls. So there's nobody in that studio. So if you think WSM's live in the middle of the day, no, it's not. And a lot of stations aren't. They'll go in and they'll do all their drops. The disc jockey will. They'll just plug it all in and just let it roll. It's fascinating. It's fascinating how it works now. It's very, very crazy. But I used to work live on the air all the time. So, you know, I did it back in the old school days. Turntables and everything, and tape machines that had all the tape and you had to cut it with a razor. I am that old. So there you go.
Tape machines that you had to cut with a razor.
Yeah. Well, when you go to edit, it's like now I can take and I can do a voice track, and if I mess up, I can go in and just delete it digitally and fix it. Well, if I was rolling that on tape, I'd have to go back in and find where I would roll the tape and listen to it in audition and be like, oh, there it is. And I would physically cut it with a razor at both places where I wanted to cut that piece out and put the tape on it and push it back together. And that's how we edited. And you try to do that after you've taken we would take phone calls in our commercial breaks of somebody who'd won something. And the minute we got it recorded, then we're splicing and editing and zip, 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 trying to get it ready to go back on the air. Sometimes even before we come out of the commercial break. You were fast. You had to be fast. You had to be fast at it. And sometimes you would record it, and maybe you'd give yourself, 10 minutes to get it back together because you might play a song or something and then play it. But no, you're doing that edit real time, with the machine and with radio stations look so different. I mean, now people who are old school radio and they walk into a radio station now and they haven't been in one in a while, and they're like, what is this? What is this control board? And it's crazy. It's crazy.
And look, I thought you all did all that live for real. Like you had them on the phone.
Oh no, now you can't, because if you take, unless you're in a delay. Now, like if you're calling into the radio stations that do talk radio, the reason why we can't take calls here is because we're not on a delay. Because of the FCC, you could do this if you were just cable based. If you're just internet based, you could take live calls, and if they said something bad, you could just dump the call. Okay. And if something offensive that's against FCC regulations went out, it's not going to hurt you because you're not a terrestrial signal. But if I were to take a call here live because of our signal, and somebody said something that's highly offensive, which they could very quickly,
right?
And it gets out on public airways, this station could be heavily fined and could lose their license.
Wow.
Still.
Okay.
It's not near as strict as it used to be because people just don't turn it in. They're like, oh, that's nothing new. That kind of thing. And so, I can remember somebody saying things, and, when we were doing live radio and morning shows especially, sometimes somebody that was one of the talent would accidentally say something. Oh, and I've had things that came out of my mouth and they're like, did LaVern say that? And it's like, no, I didn't. But they'll think they heard something and call the radio station. Well, I heard her say this. And they're like, no, she didn't,
Wow.
and yeah, I mean, I have nothing offensive really, but I'm going to get into it. But one time, I can't even explain it because what they thought I said, we're not even going to go there. But anyway, but I didn't say it. And I had people and I didn't get in big trouble over it, but I did get called into the program director's office, and they said, somebody called and said, you said this. Did you say this? And I'm like, no, and it was funny. But fortunately I had several people there that heard what I said, and they're like, no, she didn't say that. So it was no big deal. But yeah, I've had friends of mine though that got in big trouble over things that they did and said live on radio. And yeah,
Wow.
you got to be careful. There's a lot of things. Songs will be edited. You'll have songs that you hear, rap songs or something, and what's being broadcast on the public airwaves is different than what you can buy when you go down to Spotify or wherever you buy radio, to iTunes. It'll be different. And you have to be mindful of that. Your kids, it's like you hear it on the radio and you think, oh, that's fine. And then they download it. No, it's not. It's got all kinds of trash in it. So, oh, yeah. Yeah, it's different.
Girl, you need to make your rounds to the churches and like this is a whole different level of education point for us as believers, right?
I agree.
In that sense of like we think
I've heard that
okay.
it's fine.
Yeah. Well, but I mean, even like we were talking about the shows, like I've seen that. That's fine.
Yeah.
Ooh, the enemy seeks.
Yeah.
Prowling around.
For sure. And then there's, and it's too, my daughter-in-law, we were talking, and she goes, I think there's just some things we watched when we were younger that people just didn't think about because we just didn't notice it. But now we're like, we're so conscious of it that we hear some things that were innuendos and things like that. And I don't know, I'm still convinced it was edited. Because I don't remember that show Dinosaurs is one particular. I mean, we watched that. I don't remember that being offensive when it was broadcast on the airways.
Right.
But boy, if you download it from Prime, ouch, it is rough. And it's not for kids. It's definitely not for kids. So anyway,
well, I think that there's an agenda for that, right? Like the enemy's trying to get in at every little crack and crevice.
And
why wouldn't he? I mean, like it's evident now. Mm-hmm. This has probably been going on under the radar for a long time, and just we've watched the. I don't want to call it boldness of the enemy, but like it's not being hidden anymore.
Oh no, mm-mm.
Not like it used to be. Mm-mm. And so this in your face kind of going toe to toe with this, it's a little shocking. It's like, Dorothy, we are not in Kansas anymore. Like what happened?
Watch your kids if they're. I mean, you try to put filters and things on their digital devices. But watch I mean, if you can really watch them when they're scrolling sometimes and something that'll just pop up. And I mean, if you've ever taken, I've noticed this of men too.
Yes.
The images that are I'm like, what in the world is on your, and it's like, it just pops up.
Right.
And every now and then, even in something that I'm scrolling, something will pop up and I'm like, what is that? And I don't even pause because I don't want to give the algorithm any kind of we got our attention.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
But the things I'll go to a news site and there's so much stuff you have to filter through to get to the news story. And I don't spend a lot of time on social media because I'm tired of it. And they target. Decision. Oh, you know what? I wore this specifically because I wanted to make sure and talk about, this is a Decisions, Choices, and Options t-shirt. Choose your path. Decisions, Choices, and Options. Their dinner that's coming up in April, I want to say. I'll have Joy in here, Joy Wassel. She's the founder. They're having Riley Gaines is the keynote speaker. That's the female swimmer. On that ticket, if you're going to want to go, you better get in line because that's going to be a really big event. But I'll find the date here in a minute and give you the save the date on it. But that's one of the reasons I want to start talking about that, and I'll get Joy in. But and I don't know why I got Decisions, Choices, and Options. One of the things that they share is how that they are absolutely targeting your kids. There was they tell a story. There's somebody that they work with that saw graphic images come in on their kids' tablet after they had already set up stuff. But like within one of the programs that, they thought, oh, this is fine. And all of a sudden they look back over and they're like, what in the world? Mm-hmm. And it was just kind of very quickly popping into this kid feed. Mm-hmm. And it's just incredible what they're seeing. It when I see a kid with their face in a tablet, and God bless you, I understand. When I had a studio, I still have a studio in my house, and I did traffic from my home. And I had basically a little daycare room right outside the studio windows where my kids were playing while I was working. And what I would often do, I had a TV that was up high, and I'd put, Barney and, Blues, tapes that I had that were absolutely okay. And so I understand that because that helped me. I tried to
Right.
do, the educational things.
Balance. Yeah.
It helped. It helped me get through my work day and allow me to be with my children and work and have all the things. And so I get that. But man, when it's tied to anything that you're not controlling,
Mm-hmm.
and you think you put all these things on there, but then you okay this part of kid YouTube. How do you know something's not being shoved in there? And what they say at Decisions, Choices, and Options is they're doing it.
Yeah.
And you got to be so careful about handing something that's connected to the internet. I mean, if you've got something you've downloaded and you've seen it and it's okay and that's another thing. But if it's got internet access and it's some kind of a stream that they're
Mm-hmm.
watching,
They have open
beware.
access.
Beware.
Well, and I feel like putting the kids' label on it
all they think
says
is fine.
like, yeah, right. Well,
No.
no, but to me, that's even putting that like, oh, here's
Mhm.
it's like asking for the target and spot, like, oh, here's some
Yep.
easy access. Well, and it was like I asked the boys the other day. There was, I think it was earlier in February that there was a headline about a little girl in Goodlettsville. I say little girl, I think she was 13 or 14, but it was one of those like,
Mhm.
hey, she's missing,
Right.
and there
They
was
found her, by the way. Yeah, I know which one
Yes.
you're talking
Okay.
about.
So there was a new app that was mentioned in this news
Yeah.
feed, and I'm asking the boys. I said, "Have you heard of this app?" And they're like, "No." Like it's probably like, blah, and they give me 10 other ones. It's like, Lord, okay.
Yeah.
But what was so shocking and scary for me to hear and read about this app was not only is it like it's where you can go make friends, right?
Yeah.
But there was a location track, like
Yeah. Location
so
tracker.
yes,
Yeah.
on that app to where it's like okay, and it's when we stop and think about how predators groom,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's boys, boys, teenage girls. And I remember whenever I was doing that education, really before all of the availability through phone and tracking devices, that there would be certain things that the predators would look for, like even walking in a mall. So we've
Yeah.
gone from
Yeah.
I'm picking you out in public to now I know that this person needs or wants relationship. They're
Mhm.
seeking companionship. So now I know where they are exactly. So
Yeah.
there's like it's like there's not a safe place anymore,
Oh,
right?
No. Mm-mm.
And it's that awareness as parents of they know where your kids live
Mm-hmm.
when they're on. I mean, and Greg and I've talked recently. It's like this is probably one of the worst things that we've ever done to our kids was allow, like if we had a redo button.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
And I mean,
and
and
I-
initially, like we did it for Tyler, that was part of the early, like oh well, when he got diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, like we need to have this
monitor,
access,
and
right?
it's a good thing for that. Yeah.
But it's when I think about the likelihood of what they've been exposed to, even like you said, like
Even
I
with
put
the
all the
filters.
parameters, I put on the filters, all of the things,
Yeah.
like it's still. They've seen things and heard things that I had prayed as a mom that they would never see and hear.
Yeah. And it happened with mine. Mine were coming along whenever we had, we didn't have phones yet, but now they got phones as they started getting into high school. I guess I can't remember the timeline on when they had a phone, but it was later on because the technology wasn't there yet. It wasn't early, but I can remember finding something on one of my kids' like iPods or something. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
And we had all kinds of barriers up to prevent that. And I was so stunned. And this is a conversation that, I have with my kiddos now because they know that I work with I talk about, I'm on the recovery court board. I'm part of the team of volunteers that run Celebrate Recovery up at Madison. And so, and I help with the one down here in Epiphany as well. So they know that I work in that world.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll talk about addiction and things. And I said, addiction is not just chemical and alcohol.
Right.
That's about 30% of what happens with Celebrate Recovery. The rest of it is from everything to gaming, to spend too much money, to I eat too much,
Right.
to the P word. We hate talking about porn. gambling. I have kids that are addicted to online gambling, and I'm not kidding. High
Right.
school kids.
Oh,
I have a sweet friend that did a video for them that she was has a gambling problem to the point she was homeless.
oh my
And
gosh.
so I said, "Would you mind recording something for them?" And I showed them.
Yeah.
You know, just I said, "Kids, watch this." You know, because I've got 3 or 4 boys that are just they talk about gambling online all the time, and it got their attention. I don't know if it's going to help, but it got their attention. And then you know we get started talking about that, and I said, "Well, you know, one of the biggest things we see in addiction right now is the P word." And I just that's all I say to my kids. I just say the P word, and we know what we're talking about. It's incredible,
Right.
incredible how addicted these kids are. And you talk about destroying relationships, just destroying them. But what we were talking about is how they'll pop these little things up, and it just you can't help but just see it. And if you even pause and go,
And
"What
it
in the
just
world?"
jumps, yeah.
That algorithm's going to start sending it out, and they target men because, you know, but women. Oh my goodness, the people who we hear from in Celebrate Recovery, women who have gotten
Yes.
addicted to the P word, and I'm telling you, in kids, it's a horrible issue right now.
Right.
Horrible issue.
Well, it's a horrible,
Yeah,
let's be real, it's a horrible issue in the church.
you better
When
believe
you
it.
look at the percentage, and I think, a lot of times women either it's not that we're overlooked, it's just usually the entry point is different, right? Ours is more of the erotic literature and
Yeah.
the books and
Yes,
that
like I was
and that
talking
whole
about
like, oh,
Outlander
the
and
dream,
all
here he
that.
comes and he
It's like,
slips.
oh,
Yeah.
and because
Yes.
it was you know like you said
Yes.
the skanky novels and
Yeah.
stuff, you know.
And I remember, and so this is what's crazy when we think about like going back and what we don't think about. Like I didn't think about me being exposed to that. Like
Mm-hmm.
it just it was never taught that way. It was never, but I can remember my grandmother, like she worked full time. She and grandpa farmed. I mean,
Yeah.
they were just good old country folk. And I loved going and spending the night at their house. I can remember like grandpa's pastime was sitting in the chair at the end of his hard work day. I remember Hee Haw being on, and like that was his
Yeah.
show. He had to watch Walter Cronkite. We had to watch Hee Haw.
Yeah.
But grandma, when everything was done on her chore list, she would sit in her chair and she'd just read books after. She had an end table that had doors on it. Those were full of books. The attic upstairs, there were, I mean, I'm not kidding, LaVern, probably 20 of the old like paper bag, grocery bags
Yeah.
full of they were Harlequin romance novels.
Whoa. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I didn't know. So, whenever I'm 10, 11, I'd ask grandma, no, you don't need to read these, whatever. And so whenever she was out in the
Yeah.
garden one day, like I started reading things and it's like, oh,
What? Yeah.
what? But and this is what's crazy. And it's like the beauty and how God designed our bodies to respond. The enemy wants to take it, distort it, and pervert it, right?
Right.
So even at 12 or 13 years old, reading something that I had never experienced before,
Yeah.
there's still something that's happening
Yeah.
as a response to reading that. Doesn't mean I'm wrong, doesn't mean I'm dirty, it means my body's responding to how God created it to be, even if I'm picking up junk that I don't know that I'm picking up.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so that then it's like the enemy access, right? To be able like, first of all of these are dreamy romance novels, right? At that point in time, it's like, oh, he's going to come sweep you off your feet.
Yeah.
And so you have this false idea of what relationships
Yes.
look like. You have this false idea. So when you start having these emotions and those feelings, then it's like, oh, well, naturally, this is what happens on page 30. So here we go.
Yeah.
And so just the deception that's even in that. But as we know, and you've probably heard it, like, what is it? Sin keeps you longer than you intend and takes you further than you intended to go.
Yeah.
And so you get caught in that, and it just keeps like, because we know it's never like, that's not enough. There's something else that has to satisfy that. And so there's so much entrapment in that. And it's interesting that you bring that up. Do you need to do a little
Oh
commercial
no,
break?
we're good. We can
Okay.
do it here in a minute, and I want you to get to whatever you
Yeah,
brought.
yeah,
too,
yeah. No,
but,
well, I just had a couple ideas. It's like, Lord, where are we going today? So it's fine.
well, there
It's
you
just like,
go.
here we go.
There you go.
But we did we facilitated another stand up for your sister recently, and it's asking the majority of the times that we do this. We did it at the recovery center a few weeks ago too, but the majority of the time that we do this is in a church lady group setting. And what it is it's asking all the hard questions, yes or no. You circle for you, but like you don't put your name on the paper. But if you've ever, some of them aren't really time stamped. It can be like have you ever, or are you, or kind of in the same sentence. But
Right.
so all of the questions that you circle yes to, you circle yes. The rest of them you circle no. You turn your paper back in. We reshuffle and we pass them out to the group. And as we're facilitating, the paper that you have, if you have a yes on it when that question's asked, you stand up for your sister.
Right.
So the women in the room, first of all, we break off the shame and isolation that the enemy tries to use in those spaces, and especially even when we're in church, right? Like if somebody really, all of the stupid enemy lies. But there were a couple different questions that the Lord had me add to this one, because I'm like, oh, we're going to revamp this a little bit. And one of them, because under the addiction part was, and it was a bigger sweep, but it was like, have you or are you addicted to screen time, like electronics, devices? Is it social media? Is it videos? Is it TV? This big, everyone in the room stood up. That was my only question, that everyone
Wow.
in the room stood up. And these are women, a couple teens, but the majority of these 20, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80, I think was, so we have this span of, yes, I've struggled with this, or I am struggling with this being a problem, it being an outlet, being, and so it's interesting. It's interesting because it just doesn't affect kids. And so we're looking at, as parents and as whatever, as we're looking, sometimes I don't think my kids can walk through the parking lot without, it's like, put your phone down. Put the dinner time is a no phone zone. Like there's boundaries and things, but there's also times we know that they're not around us. And it's like, gosh, you all, come on. But also going, okay, Lord, search me and show me where. I mean, it's nice when we're sitting and we're waiting. What are we doing? Checking email, doing whatever. Yeah. It's like, what did we do 20 years ago before this was? It's like, oh my gosh,
you lived life and you had conversations.
Oh
it's
my
incredible,
gosh.
and I mean, this it's a tool that is a wonderful. It opens up the world, and we can use it for good. But boy, the old enemy is going to take it for evil if we don't use it for good. And so you have to be so careful. And before we change the topic, because I want to get to what you want to say, and I'll do my break, and we'll come back and do that. Have these conversations with your kids, guys. Sit down and have the hard conversation with your children and say,
yes.
Have you viewed porn?
Yeah.
Have you seen this online? And then have you gambled? I mean, these things that you think they're not doing, ask them. And then when they say no, ask them again, are you sure? Have you,
right.
Because they're going to lie if they're doing it, number one.
Right.
And just make them think about it and say, I'm going to take your word for it, but if you are, I want you to understand how it can affect you having a healthy relationship with your spouse later.
Right. Even with the gambling and the youth,
yeah.
At some point, like they don't have jobs.
Yep.
So if they're not getting an allowance from you to support this, then they're going to go into debt somewhere. And then that's a stronghold for somebody to go, oh, well, you know what? You owe me $500. So here you need to sell this. You get to go. So that entrapment into something darker and deeper is, and our kids' brains, that executive functioning doesn't go, oh, if I do this, then in 2 months I'm going to be here, and in 4 months, like we don't do that whole like, oh, here's the plus side, here's the minus side. No, it's like, oh, I need to do it. And like that, just that instantaneous. So they don't have the ability to have that reasoning and judgment
No discernment. Yeah. I
Mm-mm.
mean, because they're just so young. But
Yeah.
have these hard conversations with your kiddos. And I just, there's so much more going on than you realize. And you try to think that it's not happening. But man, I overhear little bits and pieces of conversations in my classroom. And it's just, and I will chime in when appropriate and say, what did you just say? You know, I heard one of them because we were talking about the gambling issue because I had just recently had the conversation, very candid conversation with a couple of the kids, and then I said people are addicted to all kinds of things. I said people are addicted to the P word, and talking about celebrate recovery, and I heard across the room, yeah, so and so is, and it was somebody that was sitting there in the class, and at one point I glanced over at them, and you could just see the downturned eyes, so I know it was true. And I don't know. I didn't address it. It's not my place to. But I did say to the class, I said, you've got to understand, if you know somebody that's caught up in that, it will destroy your relationships. If you want to have a healthy relationship, I've been married to my husband for 35 years, and I'm telling you, if you have any dream of having that kind of committed relationship and the beauty that is, you better get off of it.
Mm-hmm.
And you better make a concerted effort because it will destroy you. It will
Well,
absolutely destroy
and I
you.
think the realization of the involvement of the church as believers,
Yeah.
right? Because what happens is there is a chemical release in the brain. Again, the body's functioning the way that it was designed to
Yes,
do, but then the enemy
exactly.
comes
It's
in,
come in
and
mhm.
then there's shame and guilt that goes with this because, and at some point in time you've been told like I really shouldn't be doing this, but then that your body's craving
Yep.
that hormone release, that chemical release, and so there's a physical
Mm-hmm.
part that you're having to battle on top of it. So it's one of those where like we hear you can't just go, yeah, I don't want to do this, but then there's this craving, this desire, and then the spiritual component to it that really requires a discipling and somebody walking alongside. There is freedom and that there is hope in that, but um, you know, I know we joke around and say the struggle is real. No, the struggle is
It
real,
is very.
and it's deadly.
Mm-hmm.
It's deadly to you, to your relationships, to your mental health, to all of the things. So that entrapment of people, there are people that will help you get out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's just and again, Celebrate Recovery is a great place, and they even have a program. The landing is for teens, and it's a Celebrate Recovery for. And we have they're working on. They've got one here at Epiphany that's not a huge one, but it is a group of young people that come together. And for kids that are really struggling, I tell them go to Long Hollow because Long
Yes.
Hollow's got a huge one for youth. And if you've got
Wouldn't
a
it
kid,
be great if we could have those at our
mm-hmm.
schools? Now,
uh,
people wouldn't have to come, but after school,
Yep.
have a little
program for
program,
kids.
but a private
Yeah.
area to where it's not like, oh, everybody who goes in room 3 is, whatever,
Yeah,
not to
exactly.
add shame to it, but like it would be so great if that could be easier access to the kids, or even, Zoom or some technology
Something.
base that they're, but it is that first step of having to go, okay, and there, and this is what's beautiful too, and that was kind of ties into what I felt like he had on my heart this morning, was the reminder of the parable of the sheep, right? He
Mm-hmm.
left the 99 to go after the one.
Right.
And he is all about the one. And one of the most beautiful things that took place in the last time we facilitated the Stand Up for Your Sister, one of the other questions that he had me add to that form, because we talk about like self-harm and, suicidal thoughts and whatever, but he had me add the question for, are you currently experiencing any thoughts of harm or suicide?
Yeah.
It's always been, had you. And I'm like, are we really going to put this on here today, Jesus? And it's like, yeah, okay, we'll do it. And there was one lady that stood up for her sister when that question was read. And thankfully, we were able to have a conversation with the person who actually circled that yes, but that what was so profound and still overwhelming to the point of tears is like the Lord had put that on my heart days before, He knew who was going to be in that room.
Yep.
And he knew who was suffering and struggling.
Yep.
And he intentionally called her name out,
Wow.
not for shame, not for guilt, not for embarrassment. But I also know, because of the number of people in the room, that there were others.
Yeah.
And there's a freedom in just the acknowledgement. Like, there's those everybody has struggles. Everybody has had addictions or is having addictive issues and broken relationships and all of the things. The enemy's stronghold starts to be loosened when we step out and go, yeah, I have this problem, LaVern.
Right.
And whether that's in a room, a safe place, and a room to be able to stand up and say that, or if it's with a trusted friend, but the enemy, that grip loosens when you are no longer battling this in isolation by yourself. It's
Amen.
kind of like that same thing, whenever the predators come, when the lions pick off, like, they look for the weakest one in the pack, right? Like, they isolate intentionally. And that's the same thing. The enemy isolates and then continues to pound, because his method, his purpose is to steal, kill, and destroy. So if he can isolate you, he can steal your hope, he can steal your joy, he can steal your peace. He is intent on killing you. And if he can't take you off the earth physically, then he's going to kill everything in your life, still with that intention.
Mm-hmm.
And then whisper, you are horrible at a whole different, you might as well. What's your purpose on this earth?
Yeah.
And so,
Incredible.
yeah, it is. But
Yeah.
there's freedom whenever, just jump in.
Well, and it's like we talk about this a lot at Celebrate Recovery. The verse where it says that come together and confess your sins to each other so you can pray for each other and to be healed. And I tell them all the time. I said, you got to understand, sin is not something you have necessarily gone and done and commit. Sometimes it is, but it's things that have been done to you that rob you of your peace. I heard Christy McClellan describe it so well. Sin is the absence of shalom, because that's where God wants you to live, is in shalom. So anything that causes the absence of that peace in your life is sin. So when you hear that scripture, confess your sins to each other so you can pray for each other and be healed. It may be this happened and, it wasn't my fault, but somebody just needs to hear it, because they're like, yeah, me too. Or if you're like, well, I'm experiencing these thoughts, I'm experiencing this emotion right now. And you're like, yeah, me too.
Right.
And so I love that stand up for your sister concept. I know they did that at one of our women's events one time, and everybody just came back and was like, wow, that was amazing. And the things that came out of that, and the pathways that began to start healing from that. I don't usually get to those things. And that's when I'm like, man, I wish I'd been there. There's been 2 or 3 women's events. I'm like, ooh, I missed that, and, because they were just amazing. And, but that was one of them. And it was that stand up for your sister, format that they did. And it just sounds like it was really breathtaking.
Well, and I think what's shocking for most of us is, like, again, these are mainly women that have been in church or are in church. So to see the impact across the generation, because again, like, the enemy wants us to think it's just you. Like, you can't say that in church. Like, this is like,
you can't.
You can't, or then everybody's going to talk about you, or, whatever. It's going to be like, you're the woman at the well. You're going. But this was so profound. I had one of the girls say this to me recently, and it's like, I never thought of it that way. And like, there's another layer of freedom. And it's like, Lord, you are so awesome. So we know, like, the woman at the well, she went at a different time. She didn't go with her friends because she's on man number 5, and she's not even married to him. So she was a reputable woman, but not for the reason why she wanted to be a reputable woman in her village, right? So she encounters Jesus at the well, and then she goes back, and because of her testimony, her whole village encounters the Messiah. Yeah. So the beauty of that is we have spheres of influence. But whenever Carlotta said this to me the other day, she was like, I had this whole new revelation of that story. She said she went back to the place. She goes, everybody in the village didn't know she had a life encounter. She was still the town whore, the town
Yeah.
whatever. She was still all of those labels
Yeah.
when she came back into her village, when she came back into her situation. But yet she came back going, "This is Jesus." And it's like, oh my gosh. And that's exactly what happens when we step into that freedom, when we have that encounter with him, that people are still our people, our villages, our spheres of influence. When we're like, well, that was LaVern, and then she did that. It doesn't matter. Like when you've had that encounter,
You don't
with him,
care.
it doesn't matter.
No.
And there's such freedom that starts to happen. And I think that's one of the beautiful parts of this. And plus, it gives us, because we know where we've walked, it gives us more sympathy or empathy for other people in the room whenever their behaviors don't line up with how we think they should be behaving,
Exactly.
right? Like we don't know. Like I don't. Are you the one that like,
Yeah.
what junk do you have in the trunk that you're still
Yep.
walking out your healing with the Lord? And so, there's just so many layers of healing.
I
It is
tell
beautiful.
you, it's nearly, we've got like 7 minutes, and I do need to do a break. Then I'm going to come back and
right.
I'm going to let you. And it's like, I pulled in the parking lot, and I'm like, okay, Lord, just shut my mouth and let Lisa present what she brought. And it just didn't happen. And I'm so sorry, but we just went down a rabbit hole, you
It's
know.
not a
and,
rabbit hole.
But I think it's an important one when we talk about what your kids are being exposed to, what your family, your husbands, your wives are being exposed to.
Yes.
Because of the airways and what they are now. So that was not where we intended to go, but I think it was, something people needed to hear. So let's pause for a second. Then I want you to unpack what you've got there. But we're going to pause and talk about Barry and Rebecca Richards with Exit Prime Realty. We love the sponsorship that they bring to this program and the commitment to the program, and love them. If you can go, I go to Rebecca's Facebook page pretty much every morning just to kind of see what she's put up on here. And man, they've got a really cool property that they've put up right by the lake. And what's really neat is the drone footage and the way they presented it is so beautiful. Man, you're going to want this place. It is gorgeous. But you can go to Rebecca Richards, Exit Prime Realty. You can see this latest property. It's Paradise Point. And it is awesome, and you can go and check it out. But it's beautiful, and you can also, they have shared the interview that we did first of the week. They came in, well, they were here Wednesday, and we had a full hour with them just talking about the real estate market right now and what it's like, and interest rates versus housing prices. And always a question I ask them when they're in here is it a good time to buy? And the answer is always yes, because if interest prices are down, housing prices are up. If interest prices are up, housing prices go down. And all you got to do is just look at it, and you'll see that's exactly the truth. It's going to be the same on one side or the other, but you need to find out how much home can you qualify for. That's one of the first things. If you're selling property, you need to make sure you know what the properties in your area are going for and what you can anticipate being able to realistically sell your property for. But you also, if you don't present it in the absolute best light with great, drone footage like you're seeing on this listing that they've got up on Rebecca's page right now, or walkthrough tours, great photography, it's going to make a difference. People are just not going to notice it, and that's Barry's expertise as a former marketer. He has his brokerage office here in town. She has her agency office up in White House. They combined those two, and about a year and a half ago opened up a new branch in the Exit Tree, Exit Prime Realty. You can connect with them at sellwithbecky.com, sellwithbecky.com, or BUYRobertsonCounty.com, or you can just give them a call. Give Rebecca a call at 615-504-7425, 615-504-7425, or you can call Barry, 615-504-7424, 615-504-7424, and always let them know you turn. That you wanted to talk about specifically.
Well, we talked about our going after the one, so I love that just tied into everything. We'll go back. I'll let you look at that one. We can make a picture. We are in a new Hebrew month, and it's the 12th month of the Hebrew calendar, Adar. And so this month has laughter and joy and strength. And it's just the joy. His joy is my strength. And I think, as we do get bombarded by so many different messages and things throughout our lives, that reminder that he's our source.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that whenever I spoke at Refresh last month.
And I called it breathe a while ago. I
No, you're
apologize.
good.
It's
It is
refresh.
breathe. We do need to breathe.
Oh yeah.
But the when I was reading the story of Mary and Martha, one of the things that stood out to me that really hadn't popped out before was when Jesus speaks to Martha, saying, "Mary has found the one concern, and it will not be taken from her."
Yeah.
And that reminder of not just in this season, but because of like we know that there's an acceleration. We can see things in the natural that are reflecting the spiritual warfare that's taking place, and there's things that we may not be able to understand with our own eyes and ears and our own thoughts, but that reminder of to stay in him and abiding in him and being at the feet of Jesus, because that should be our one concern. And he is our joy. He is our strength. He is our provider. And the realization that that is going, well, I was just having this conversation last night. That's going to look different than what we think. Like I keep going, this whole dream of redeem, and then now with the functional medicine part, like it's like none of this is playing out in real life like I had ever imagined or dreamed, right?
Yeah.
But it's like, this is really cool, God, like what you're doing as I say yes, as it's crazy, but it's him and it's fun. And he knew, because he knew that when he designed me, that he put all of these desires in.
Mm-hmm.
I just thought they were going to look this way. And it's so that reminder of the joy and the adventure, and that the Father's always talking. There was something I had read earlier this week, and it's like, wow, I don't do that every day. And not in a guilt and condemnation way, but it's in a deeper relationship with the Father. And it's like that positioning of asking him essentially like, hey, Dad, what's on your heart today?
Mm.
What do you have on your heart as we journey through the day together today? Like, what's on your heart? And yes, we get to do things with him, but hearing what's on his heart for his people, and you know, even for me, right? But just that expectation of communication and relationship and intimacy with him. You know, if every time that we interact, every time that I have a conversation with you, that you're asking me to do things for you, you're like, the only time you're stopping by, it's like, hey, so can you help me with my car? And can you help me with this? And can
Yeah.
you do this? And can you do this?
Yeah.
Can you do, okay, I'll see you later. You know, and again, his view of us is different than what I'm getting ready to say in the natural, but in the natural, it's like, I can love you and 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 want to spend time with you. But if your engagement with me is just that drive by, and I'm sitting here going, but LaVern, sit down, let's have a conversation. And even in the sit down conversations, if you're just like, blah, 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 all of, you know, and then you leave, it's like, we're missing, he wants to engage with us. He wants to have relationship with us. And I think that the enemy is able to whisper that that's not true, right? Like the idea that the creator of the universe did everything to just be with us up to the point of sending his son to die for us so that our relationship with him would be restored.
Mm-hmm.
Not, I'm ruling over you, but father, son, father, daughter, and father, son, father, daughter in whole, healthy relationships have an intimate two-way conversation, right?
Yeah.
Like we know his heart, just like, you know, I mean, and an example is even marriage. Like, you know, your husband's heart, you know how he's going to respond to certain things. You know how he's going to feel about certain things. You know him well enough that you could probably with pretty good assurance respond in his behalf, right?
Right. Exactly.
So are we like that with our Heavenly Father as ambassadors to the kingdom? Like, are we responding the way our Father would respond.
That's good. That's good. Yeah.
So there's a whole but it's out of his love and desire for us, not out of I want you to perform a certain way, but out of the fullness of what he created us and designed us to be with him and to walk in that, that. Yeah.
Gives a whole new meaning to what would Jesus do?
It was.
Yeah. Because I love how you said that. You know your husband so well that you can kind of respond in a way you think they would. Well, we need to know God that well. I mean, that was so good right there. That right there is the reason you came today, Lisa. That was it, is because that's what the relationship that God wants with us is, so that when we have to deal with the fallen world, we will respond in the way our dad would.
Yeah. That's
being the hands and feet, and not because, well, God wants me to do this. No, it's because I know this is what God would do. Man, that's good, Lisa.
Right. Well, and there's that, and I don't want to say emotion, but when we're that close to him, the things, your husband's name is Mark, right? Yeah. Okay. Somebody call him. We'll start a whole different rumors. But, the things that hurt his heart.
Yeah.
Do they not impact you?
Absolutely.
And it may not have anything to do with you, but when his heart is broken over something, so is yours. Yeah. And so as we get in deeper intimacy with him, that's we don't have to fabricate that. We don't have to, it's the natural, what breaks our Father's heart breaks ours. And we see the things that he sees. We see it how he sees it, and we feel his love and compassion towards it. Yeah. So, yeah.
So good. And I was expecting Lee Marie to come bopping in here and run us off. And then I looked at the clock and I'm like, it is now 8:04 and we've gone over. But I don't know what happened to Lee Marie. My understanding would be that she and Doc Brown would be in here today because it is the first Friday of the month. And so I thought they would be bebopping in here. Oh no, here we go. She sent me a text. Doc couldn't make it today, so they're going to reschedule and have it another day. But that gave us an extra few minutes on the air to kind of unpack some stuff. Tell them again where they're coming, where they need to come tonight for Refresh at We Are Church, and what is the address?
1501 Hadley Avenue in Old Hickory. So our doors open at 6:00, and our service will begin at 7. We have some light food and refreshments and fellowship during that 6 to 7 hour. But
what's your theme tonight? Who's speaking?
So tonight, Sonia Wiley, pardon me, she's speaking. I think what wound up being in a text thread earlier this week, I think it is going to be kind of tied into that sitting at his feet and the joy and the strength and everything that comes from just being in his presence.
I love it.
Yeah.
Be there. Refresh tonight at We Are Church. One more time, the address.
1501 Hadley Avenue.
Thank you guys for joining us. We're a little over because I kept thinking Lee Marie was going to walk in. So anyway, I lost track of time. But appreciate you being here, Lisa, and making the drive in. And thank y'all for joining us. Be sure and find a place to be. Go to Refresh tonight or get involved with a spiritual community, because if you do not have a connection to a spiritual family, you just don't know what you're missing, y'all. You don't know what you're missing. So find it. Let this be the weekend that you start that in your life. And we will check in with you on Monday here at One Street Over. God bless. Have a wonderful weekend.